Welcome to HumanityWins.net. Please read the important disclaimer on your screen. All of the content provided is for entertainment purposes only. It should not be taken as medical or legal advice. Please contact your doctor or lawyer if you require such advice. Thank you. The show starts right now. Hello, welcome to this new episode of HumanityWins.net. This is episode 265 from October the 30th of the year 2023. Today is a Monday, and today's episode is going to be, we go back to aviation, and it's going to be the unfortunate accident of Flash Airlines Flight 604. Boeing 737-300, very similar to the one you see on the screen right now, that unfortunately crashed out there in the coast of Egypt in 2004. I find there are many accidents and incidents I can pick in aviation that are interesting, but this is one of the most interesting ones because, first of all, the jury is still out if there were any mechanical failures that caused this accident. And the common opinion and the official accident report, and not necessarily is what happened, but the common opinion among experts is that there was very poor communication in this case between the captain and the first officer. This flight had a captain that he was very experienced, very old, very senior, and had a very young first officer. I believe he was in his 20s, so he was probably getting kind of his first experiences as a pilot, and it's common for these airlines. This was a charter airline that actually failed 2 months after this accident. They only had 2 airplanes, so yes, if one airplane, you have an accident, most probably you cease operations, and all the fallout from the accident, insurance-wise and everything, is very common in such a small airline. If they do have a catastrophic accident, they will cease operations. But it's very common on these type of airlines that it's not that they go cheap, but they usually hire very old captains that some of them are close to retire age from previous mainstream airlines, and they're basically looking at their last job. So they don't pay the full amount that such an experienced captain should get. And they get very young first officers. They pair them together and they get very young first officers, some of them out of flight school or something like that with very little experience. So it's they try to make it attractive. Why should I go and fly for Flash Airlines if I have other opportunities out there? Egypt Air, we're talking about Egypt, which is a mainstream, very well-known airline. Maybe then you jump to an airline in another country or something like that. It's exactly that, because they could hire you out right out of flight school when no one maybe is giving you a chance, and they give you the chance to make a lot of hours flying the airplane as a first officer. And at the captain, they basically offer them mostly their last job, when maybe because of age, because being so close to retirement age, a mainstream airline is probably not going to want them. Okay, so that's the formula in this kind of airlines. I'm not saying that's the formula that caused this accident. Let's watch a 8-minute video together that is kind of the best one I could find that explains the accident, explains the dynamics between the captain and the first officer. Then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this short Monday episode on Flash Airlines Flight 604. Let's watch it together.
On January 3rd, 2004, Flash Airlines was to perform a chartered service between Sharm el-Sheikh and Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport in the early morning. The flight was scheduled to make a stopover in Cairo before continuing to Paris. The plane involved, a Boeing 737-300 built in 1992, was originally delivered to the Salvadorian airline TACA before being acquired by Flash in 2001. The nature of this company and airline had meant that the airline's only 2 planes were operated as much as possible. Because of this, it was common that flights would be operated in the middle of the night. 135 passengers would board the aircraft that morning, mostly French citizens returning home after spending the new year in the sun. There were entire French families on board this flight. There were also 2 Moroccans and 1 American among the passengers, alongside 13 members of the Egyptian crew. On the flight deck was Captain Kader Abdallah, age 53. He had been working for Flash for less than a year by the time of the accident, having been hired in February of 2003. He was a senior pilot with experience in the Egyptian Air Force, retiring from the military in 2000. Abdallah was also a devoted family man, having raised 3 university-educated children. Also on the flight deck was the much younger co-pilot, 25-year-old Amr al-Shafi. He was hired by the airline in 2002, after finishing up his qualifications to fly the Boeing 737. A 3rd crew member was also on the flight deck, a first officer in training, Ashraf Abdelhamid, age 42. He had experience flying corporate jets before shifting careers into civil aviation. With dual citizenship in Egypt and Canada, he he was shadowing the flight crew on this flight. After departure from the gate, Flash Airlines Flight 604 took off into the dark night at 4:42 a.m. from runway 22 right with 148 passengers and crew on board. Sharm el-Sheikh, located on the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula, is relatively flat on the immediate coast, but there exists higher terrain northwest of the airport on the route to Cairo. To gain altitude before flying over this mountainous area, Flight 604's flight path that morning involved intercepting course 306 of the outbound radial on the airport's VOR. This meant that the plane needed to turn left after departure out over the Red Sea to align on this heading. Shortly after takeoff, as was expected, the plane began banking to the left with Captain Kader Abdallah at the flight controls. The aircraft was cleared for this turn once passing 1,000 feet of altitude. During this turn out towards and over the Red Sea, Flight 604 would pass over multiple holiday resorts. The then British Prime Minister Tony Blair had been staying in one of these resorts, prompting calls by the media following the accident that premeditation in the form of terrorism played a role, although this would later turn out to be incorrect. During the left turn, the captain called for the autopilot to be engaged. However, the captain, just a few seconds later, would appear to change his mind about the autopilot, choosing instead to keep flying manually. This was evident by the autopilot disconnect audio alert which sounded on the flight deck. While passing through 3,000 feet, Flight 604 would level its wings despite not having completed the full turn to the left to its intercepting course. The nose would also begin to slightly rise, inching to an angle just beyond 20 degrees nose up. The plane then, at 4:44 a.m., began a bank to the right, in the opposite direction that it was supposed to be going in. The captain would say, and quote, "See what the aircraft did." Knowing the plane was supposed to be turning left, he said this in response to noticing that his plane was now banking 12.5 degrees to the right. The first officer would then comment that the plane appeared to be turning right. The cause of the crash would be officially disputed, with aviation authorities in Egypt, France, and the United States disagreeing on why the plane banked to the right. The Egyptian Ministry of Civil Aviation would determine that the turn to the right was an uncommanded bank due to mechanical failure. A report by the Egyptian Commission cited a possible mechanical fault in the aircraft's ailerons, going on further to mention that the aileron control surfaces may have jammed. Note that the mechanical failure hypothesis does not include a failure of the rudder, a control surface on the Boeing 737, which has been highly criticized as on multiple occasions, failure of the rudder had caused pilots to lose control of their aircraft, leading to multiple fatal accidents. The French Bureau of Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation, the BEA, proposed a more complicated hypothesis including human factors, namely spatial disorientation. As previously mentioned, this is a broad term used to describe any one of multiple conditions, and investigators believe that the captain may have been under the effects of vertigo. Vertigo is a term itself which is often misused, even by pilots, which warrants at least a basic understanding. In an aviation context, vertigo relates to a sensation that a pilot can experience from the fluids inside one's inner ear not corresponding to what is used to feeling when gauging one's orientation. The inner ear provides the brain with cues relating to head rotation and general head movement. If a pilot out over a dark ocean at night with no visual reference for what is ground and what is water is under the effects of vertigo, they can believe their aircraft can be flying in one orientation when in fact it could be unknowingly banking. This theory is backed up by extracted control input data, which says that while Flight 604 was in its initial left turn, the captain had begun slowly bringing the plane level with his own hands, leading to investigators posing the question of, did the captain unknowingly make the turn himself? As Flight 604 continued to turn to the right, it banked sharply enough that it caused lift generation to cease, and the plane began to drop. Having climbed through 5,000 feet, the plane begins to plummet to the sea. In the following moments before impact, the plane would accelerate to beyond 400 knots. The captain requested for the autopilot to be engaged, to which the first officer attempted, but the system did not respond. In the final moments of the flight, the third member of the flight crew, the observer, Ashraf Abdelhamid, commented suggesting reducing power on the engines. While the cockpit voice recording for this flight is not available, it is noted in the accident report that the overspeed and ground proximity warning system could be heard. Shortly before impact, the pilots appeared to have the aircraft under control as the 737 is slowly pulled out from its erratic dive. Unfortunately, in this instance, the pilots ran out of altitude, and the plane crashed into the Red Sea with a nose-down position of 25 degrees and a speed in excess of 470 miles per hour. Upon impact, the plane was obliterated, killing all 148 people on board. In the aftermath of the accident, attention would be drawn to the fact that Flash Airlines did not provide the flight crew with adequate training, especially in the area of crew resource management. Some investigators believe that the first officer, being as young as he was, did not want to challenge his very senior captain, noting that the first officer could have taken control of the plane himself but chose not to intervene. This interesting power dynamic in the cockpit is believed to have been a contributing factor to air disasters in the past. The failure of the airline not providing this necessary training was a violation of aviation regulations.
Okay. Yes, that's kind of the best one I could find just in one video. I was gonna do 2 videos around 4 minutes each. I think this one is better. And as always, I include the link on the show notes, and you are more than welcome, if you wanna do it, to go and check that creator and some of his other work. Basically, I used up most of the video where he shared his basically his analysis of what went on. I'm gonna give you my final thoughts here. First of all, he's mentioned the problem on the rudder. Yes, a very well-known problem on classic 737s. Mostly appeared to affect the 737-200, which is a previous generation from this one. The 737 right now has had 4 generations. It started with a 737-100, which was upgraded to the 200 basically the year after. We're talking the 60s here, around 1967, something like that, 68. Then for 15 years, all the way to 1982, I believe. Basically, they stopped offering the 737-100. The only offering was the 737-200, which later was kind of upgraded to the 737-200 Advanced, okay? Then this type of aircraft was available, 737-300, 400, 500. That was called the classics. They tried to kind of segment we're basically talking of the second generation of the 737. Yes, there were some accidents with the rudder, which basically the rudder will go all the way to one side, causing a nose down situation, an uncontrollable dive and crash, happening most of the times at landings. That was discovered to be a problem with a valve in the rudder that just went all the way open uncontrollably, apparently for no reason. And they fixed that. They fixed that in the 1990s. So there has not been one nose down, uncontrollable dive 737 crash since the mid-1990s. I think they got it right because with so many 737 classics and first generation 200s still flying in the 1990s and early 2000s, that will have cropped up in another part. Just to let you know, in the early 1990s, I recall at least 3 of these crashes, and there were probably more in the late 1980s. So, this, I don't think that's my opinion. I don't know what happened, but I don't think this was that situation. And also, it doesn't happen that way. On those uncontrollable rudder movements, basically the airplane will immediately, go basically nose down 90 degrees almost, because you don't have any rudder. The rudder is all to one side, okay? With, basically goes all the way where you almost never use it like that. So what I think happened in this case, unfortunately, I believe there was poor communication between the very senior ex-military captain. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying there's poor communication, and the first officer, very young, he looked up to his captain, and unfortunately, that's not the dynamic that's required in a cockpit. In a way, the first officer is always checking the captain's work, and the captain is always checking the first officer's work. It's the cross-check, as it's called in aviation. You probably have heard it boarding an airplane. The flight attendants, they say to mount the doors, cross-check. You will hear that. What that means is, because there are doors in both sides of the airplane, each one take care of one of the doors to close it properly, but then they go and check the work of their partner, how they did closing the doors, and that's why they say the doors close, cross-check done, or something like that. Basically, they check their own work. Same in the cabin. It's not a one-man thing. That's why there are several reasons to have 2 pilots. One of it, of course, the most obvious one is if one of the pilots has a medical problem or even dies. That has happened, heart attack, stroke, or something mid-air. Then, imagine if we only had one pilot, then you're done. Unless there's a pilot out there among the passengers, you cannot have that, okay? The other one, that's an important redundancy, but the other one is also to check their work to see if one of the pilots is actually erratic or something like that. even if it's a captain, like this case happened, I'm not saying it's a captain's fault, let me explain. But in this case, what happened is clearly the captain was disoriented. Clearly, I think this video doesn't show some other videos I've seen. And if you're interested in this subject, I suggest you go and check a few other videos of Flash Airlines Flight 604, including the full 1-hour video of Mayday, the Mayday series. They explain it very well there. The captain was clearly confused. He was feeling one thing, and let's clarify the situation here, the conditions. It was pitch dark. When you go into the oceans, there are no lights, okay? There are no lights, and I believe there was no moon that night or something like that. So the moon helps because it reflects on the ocean, so it gives you some type of through your eyes. It could control this vertigo situation that you say, I'm feeling like we're going to the right, but I'm seeing something different, and that in your brain kind of helps out in a way. When it's pitch dark, you could be suffering the same thing like captain did. It's not nice. Some people actually close their eyes or something like that. And when you're flying and it's pitch dark, you could get to a point you don't have a reference that you're depending on your vestibular system is called to keep you, of not knowing where you're going. And your brain is kind of having a problem there to what am I doing here? So the first officer doesn't seem to be suffering from the same situation. This is called spatial disorientation. Basically, you don't know where you are going. You don't know. It's a confusion between how you feel, which comes from your ear, as explained in the video, to what you are seeing, to what you're thinking. It's a very scary and difficult situation. And some people have suffered this, for example, while driving. And the suggestion there is stop immediately, because you could cause a crash. You could harm yourself or others because you don't know what's going on. You clearly have been confused. It can happen. Believe me, it can happen. So what happened is, I think the first officer just couldn't, take over. Say, Captain, you're confused. I'll take over. We'll declare an emergency. Also, in this type of small airlines, there's a problem. In mainstream airlines, this situation demanded an emergency for sure. They didn't know if the aircraft was performing properly. But in these small airlines, as explained on the video, they start flying very early in the morning. Even this flight was 4 a.m., 5 a.m. They start flying basically 24 hours a day. The airlines, the aircraft never stop. So imagine declaring an emergency, going back to Sharm el Sheikh airport, and figuring out what's going on, and that's going to take 4 or 5 hours, and basically you are done. I mean, that totally disrupted the whole. By that time, the airplane should be in Paris, and it's just you have that added pressure that it really has to be a very strong emergency, a fire or something like that, an engine going out, something like that, to declare an emergency. This, in my opinion, in a mainstream airline is something that if recovered, if they will have recovered, they for sure will have declared an emergency and go back to Sharm el Sheikh and have the airplane checked out and have the captain checked out to see if he's fine. I believe that's what happened. That's my opinion, that I believe, unfortunately, the captain was suffering from spatial disorientation. Also, he decided not to use the autopilot. There's mention in the video that during the dive, they tried to insert the autopilot. I don't know why it's not mentioned. I believe that's the way it's supposed to behave. Just imagine if during a dive like that, 400 and something miles, the autopilot is engaged. You could have a situation that is actually worse. That is, the autopilot doesn't even know what's going on and just basically starts going up or goes the engines to max thrust or something like that. The autopilot basically rejected the going on because maybe it was designed that way. And I believe that's the case, by the way. That is designed not to be engaged in this situation, that clearly something else going on. Very unfortunate fact. I believe at the end they kind of figured out, they were able to stabilize the plane. They were going to get out from this nose down, this kind of pitch down situation, but they needed a few more thousand feet, probably 2-3 more thousand feet to recover. And then basically, again, as I said on the previous show on Air France 447, to declare an emergency. In this case, they had the airport right there. Go back to Sharm el Sheikh and call it a day, and because you have to inspect the airplane and make sure everything is fine. So unfortunately, this is just a case of, these things happen, and it's a very unfortunate accident. Again, I'm not blaming the captain. I'm blaming the dynamics in the cockpit, that the first officer should always feel he has the power, he has the authority to override the captain if he thinks that the captain is behaving, erratically. Similar situation, by the way, to military submarines, for example, that they have a captain and they have what is called an executive officer, basically a co-pilot, basically a first officer, the XO. You probably have seen it in movies. And the arrangement is this: the XO is basically always checking the captain. Okay, it's probably a little bit different situation. The captain is calling the shots, but the XO is actually all orders, for example, to fire a missile, have to go through the XO. The captain says the order, and the XO has to validate the order. So if the captain is acting erratically, the XO will supersede the captain and actually take out the captain as far as his command and take over. Similar situation, if you're interested in that dynamic, very, very good movie I like very much. Crimson Tide, released from 1995, explains the situation I just shared, basically, as how the ex-officer can take over if he believes the captain is not following regulations. So in this case, if the first officer was as a captain, you're clearly, he was being confused, but the aircraft is going right, left, and I'm kind of erratic. He didn't know what was going on. Then you know what, Captain, I'm going to take over. I'm going to land the plane in Sharm el-Sheikh, and then we'll decide what to do, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this one. This is an interesting one and very unfortunate. Again, unfortunately, around 148 people died. I wanted to say something also. I remember it since it kind of puzzled my mind. There were 13 crew members on this flight. That's not common at all. By the way, there was an observer. That's not common at all. Usually it's just the captain and the first officer on such a small plane. There was an observer up there in the cabin, in the jump seat probably. So that's the third crew member. They had 13 overall, so that means they had 10 more. So I don't know if they were flying mechanics or something like that, but doesn't make any sense. With 130-something passengers, you usually require 3 crew members. It's 1 crew member per 50 passengers. So that would have made 3 crew members, at the most 4, exaggerating. What were the other 6? I don't know how this airline, probably they were using the empty seats to fly crew members around. Maybe some crew members had to stay out in Paris for other flights. I don't know, but I just find it a little bit strange that there were 13 overall crew members on this, small, relatively small airplane. You usually see those numbers on very large airplanes. For example, if you're dealing with 500 passengers and you have first class or something, that if there's a first class of 20 or something like that, you usually have 2 crew members for those 20 first class passengers. That happens. But in economy, it's usually 1 per 50. And I just find that a little bit strange. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was interesting to you. Always, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you watching. You honor me. If you have any questions of any kind, the email is right there, hey@humanityways.net. I also added, by the way, the past few days to our YouTube About section. I haven't added it. I just forgot about it. So also, you can find it there. I hope to get more emails. Since our change of platforms, the emails have dwindled down to almost nothing. So I'm sorry. I knew some of you were not going to make the jump from the BitChute and Rumble to YouTube. I know it. That's fine. I was, it was a risk I was going to take, as I already shared a couple of times. My decision went behind it. But I hope eventually we pick up here on YouTube and I start getting more emails from you guys. And, I love it. And most of the times, if you go very long and demands a long response from me, I send you an audio message, okay? Kind of your own video just for you, my own response to you, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. And it has been going very well. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I will be back on Friday on this new 2 episodes per week, on Mondays and Fridays. I'll be back on Friday. I hope to see you then. Thank you very much. You honor me. Have a great Monday. Thanks. Thank you for making it to this part of the video. This is my favorite part. This is where I suggest to you that you discover yourself. You are not what you have been groomed to believe. You are this incredible being without limits that has eternal life, amazing strength, infinite wisdom, and a big, beautiful heart. All your limits are always self-imposed. Your best treasure in this reality is inside you. Your only mission on this life is to become a beacon of love and guidance. This version is ready to be discovered today. How do you discover yourself? The discovery process is a personal one. No one can do it for you. Dedicate 5 minutes a day to talk to yourself and the universe. Request to be connected and ask, who am I? Where do I come from? You will start getting signs, breadcrumbs, and signals. You will notice how your notions about those realities start disappearing. No more hierarchies, no more competition, no more complaining, No more depending on others. Discovering yourself equals to breaking your matrix. Your self-imposed limits will fall and you will be ready to serve humanity and help break this spell and deception on us. But you must be patient to allow others to wake up at their time through their own free will. That will be really soon, you will see, and that will start a new war. As you work towards your best version, you will notice how all emotions don't serve you anymore. Hate, fear, rage, pride, loss, envy, violence, justice, true violence, judgment of others, and other emotions will disappear from your mind and heart. You will understand those emotions serve only the evildoers and are not you. Please try to be understanding of others that don't think or feel like you. Everyone has a process. No one is right or wrong. We're all just different. Don't be concerned about being right, ever. Don't allow pride preventing you from touching things up with family and friends. It is very important you enjoy this life with your loved ones. Put in the work to patch things up and leave it to others to decide. Please relax and enjoy life. When everyone breaks their own matrix, humanity through our community consciousness will break the final spell. The new world will start and everything will gradually fall. Governments, hierarchies, and the medical and financial system will go from scarcity to abundance for all. Thank you very much for watching. Please share this episode. If you have any comments or suggestions, please use the comment section below. For private questions, conversations, and if you would like to appear on the show, please email me at hey@humanitywins.net. Thank you again. Please don't forget to visit our website www.humanitywins.net. By giving me your time, you honor me. Have a very, very, very nice day.